Blackthorne pack had one rule: fear the Alpha King, because Ronan Draeven was not the kind of wolf you challenged unless you wanted your territory burned, your dignity destroyed, and your name quietly removed from history. So when I heard he was pretending to be weak, I laughed because I thought it was a joke. Then I saw him sitting quietly in the pack hall, looking very serious while carrying 3 books he claimed were light reading, except they were upside down. Oh, and he was pretending not to notice. The first time I gave him an order, he obeyed without complaint. The second time, he carried my bags in front of the entire territory. The third time, the pack started asking me for leadership advice. And the worst part, the Alpha King was sitting in the corner watching like he was studying a strategy he did not understand, because Ronan Draeven did not pretend to be weak to survive. Oh, he did it to see if I would stand beside him when the world stopped being afraid of his name. The problem, I didn't know he was pretending, and somewhere between solving pack disputes, laughing at his terrible jokes, and discovering that the most feared alpha in the territory was secretly jealous of his own people liking me, I started falling in love with the man who was supposed to be weak. And when the truth finally comes out, I realized the Alpha King was never testing me. He was testing whether I would choose him. Without fear, the warriors dropped like stones, not from battle, from shock. Ronan Draeven stood before the gathered pack at dawn, his voice carrying across the mist-shrouded clearing with the weight of 10 years of absolute dominance. I will be resting my strength effective immediately. Silence. Elder Marlowe choked on his morning tea. 2 young wolves dropped the training dummies they'd been carrying. A she-wolf's jaw literally unhinged. Ronan kept his face carefully blank while internally cataloging every single reaction. Good, confusion, uncertainty, perfect. For how long? Someone dared to ask. Ronan turned slowly toward the voice. His eyes, still alpha gold despite his supposed weakness, landed on a warrior named Bryce who immediately regretted existing. Until I am recovered, Bryce nodded frantically. Yes, of course, absolutely. Take all the time, centuries, millennia. You're rambling, Ronan said flatly. Bryce's soul left his body. Too hard, Ronan reminded himself. Weak. Act weak. He tried to soften his posture, relax his shoulders, look approachable. The effect was him standing there like a granite cliff that had decided to be mildly less vertical. From the back of the crowd, someone snorted. Ronan's eyes snapped toward the sound. Nyra Vale leaned against an ancient oak, arms crossed, expression caught somewhere between amusement and suspicion. Her dark hair caught the morning light, and she wore the practical leathers of a territory scout. Scuffed boots, worn gloves, a knife at her thigh that she definitely knew how to use. She met his gaze, did not look away, did not lower her eyes. Interesting. The Alpha is resting, she repeated slowly, as if tasting the words for poison. The same Alpha who once tracked a rogue through 3 territories with a broken rib and didn't mention it until the rogue was dead. Ronan said nothing. The same Alpha who made Bryce over there cry during training last week, just by raising one eyebrow. I did not cry, Bryce whispered desperately. You absolutely cried, Nyra said without looking at him. Ronan felt his jaw tighten. Defend yourself? No. Weak Alpha would. He had no idea what a weak Alpha would do. He'd never been one. I require rest, he managed. Nyra pushed off from the tree and walked closer. Too close, and close enough that he caught her scent. Night air and pine and something warm underneath. Close enough that his wolf stirred with interest. You require rest, she repeated. Her eyes searched his face, and Ronan suddenly felt like he was the one being assessed for weakness. Fine. Rest. She turned away. That should have been the end of it. But then she glanced back over her shoulder, a single dark braid sliding across her collarbone. Someone added, "Try not to intimidate any more warriors while you're resting. Some of us have work to do." The pack collectively held its breath. No one spoke to the Alpha like that. Ronan should have been furious. Instead, his wolf preened. He crushed the reaction immediately. 2 hours later, Ronan sat in the corner of the pack's main hall like a particularly menacing piece of furniture. He'd chosen the spot strategically, shadowed corner, full view of the room, and close enough to the exit to make a statement, far enough from everyone to appear withdrawn, weak, vulnerable, approachable. 3 warriors walked past him without making eye contact. 2 elders crossed to the opposite side of the room. A trainee actually turned and walked back the way he'd come. Ronan stared at the wall and tried to look harmless. His resting face didn't help. Think of something soft. Puppies, flowers. The time Bryce cried. No, not that. Alpha? He looked up. Nyra stood there holding a stack of territory reports. Close again. Too close. Her scent wrapped around him like smoke. You're doing it again. Doing what? Staring at warriors like you're calculating the most efficient way to break their spines. Ronan blinked. I was thinking about flowers. Nyra's eyebrows climbed toward her hairline. Flowers. Yes. While looking at Bryce. Bryce was currently cowering near the fireplace, pretending to be fascinated by the flames. Oh yes, Ronan repeated, because he was the Alpha, and he did not explain himself. Nyra studied him for a long moment. Then something shifted in her expression, not softening exactly, but considering. All right, she set the reports down on the table beside him. Since you're resting, someone needs to review the Eastern Border Patrol schedules and settle the dispute between the Morrow and Cade families about the hunting territory split, and approve the trainees' advancement requests. She was listing things on her fingers now. Ronan stared at the stack of reports, then at her fingers, then at her face. And you're telling me this because you're the Alpha. She tilted her head. Even resting Alphas need to know what's happening in their territory unless, her voice dropped slightly, unless you're not actually planning to handle any of it. Silence stretched between them. The fire crackled. Bryce made a small whimpering sound. Ronan felt something dangerous curling in his chest. Not anger, but interest. Genuine interest in what she was actually asking. I'll review them, he said quietly. Nyra nodded once, turned to leave, took 2 steps, then stopped. One more thing. She didn't turn around. If this resting is some kind of test, it's not. You should know that packs don't stay loyal to Alphas who hide from them. She walked away. Ronan watched her go, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair hard enough to leave dents in the wood. His wolf was absolutely vibrating with something that felt terrifyingly like approval. She questioned you. She challenged you. She walked away first, yes. And you liked it, yes. That evening, Ronan attempted to look weak during the communal meal. He sat at the edge of the long table instead of the head. He served himself last. He ate slowly, quietly, without demanding updates or issuing orders. 2 young wolves sat down near him by accident, realized their mistake, and froze, like prey. Ronan glanced at them. They glanced at each other. One of them dropped his bread. Say something reassuring, Ronan commanded himself. Weak Alphas reassure. Weak Alphas say. The bread is fine on the floor, he said. The young wolves stared at him. Thank you, Alpha, one managed. Bread belongs on the floor, Ronan continued, because apparently his brain had disconnected from his mouth. Floors are where bread lives. Stop talking. Eventually, stop talking. He stood abruptly, abandoned his meal, and retreated to the shadows near the fire. From across the room, Nyra watched him with an expression he couldn't read. Then, impossibly, her lips twitched, just slightly, just enough. Ronan's wolf howled internally. Midnight found him on the training grounds, alone, finally allowing himself to move freely, sparring with shadows, releasing tension, letting his strength flow without pretense. He moved through forms too fast to track, strikes too precise to block, power rolling off him in waves that would have dropped any normal wolf to their knees. You move well for someone who's resting. Ronan froze mid-strike, turned slowly. Nyra stood at the edge of the training grounds, wrapped in a dark cloak, moonlight catching the curve of her cheek. She should not be here. He should not have been seen. I couldn't sleep, he said, which was true, but also not an explanation for why he looked like he could tear a tree from the ground with his bare hands. Nyra walked closer, stopped just outside arm's reach, close enough that her scent wrapped around him again, night air and pine and something warm. You know what I think? She asked softly. Ronan's throat went dry. What? I think you're not weak at all. Her eyes held his, steady and unafraid. I think you're testing something, or someone. His heart slammed against his ribs. And I think, she continued, taking one step closer, that if you wanted to know something about me, you could have just asked. The space between them crackled with something electric. Ronan's hand lifted. He didn't command it, didn't plan it, didn't think. Reaching toward her face, toward the moonlight on her skin. Nyra caught his wrist, not hard, just there. Warm fingers wrapped around his pulse point. You're still staring, she murmured. I'm thinking about flowers, he breathed. Her laugh was soft and surprised and devastating. I don't believe you. No one ever does. Her thumb moved, just slightly against his skin, a casual touch that felt like lightning. Then she released him, stepped back. I'll handle the Morrowcade dispute tomorrow, she said, her voice steadier than her eyes. Since you're resting. She turned, walked away, vanished into the darkness between the torches. Ronan stood frozen on the training grounds, his wrist burning where she'd touched him, his wolf pacing and snarling and yearning. He had planned to test her, to see if she would choose him without fear. Instead, she had touched him without permission, challenged him without flinching, walked away first, again, and Ronan Draeven, Alpha of Blackthorne territory, terror of the eastern woods, and the most feared wolf in 3 regions, realized with absolute certainty he was not testing Nyra Vale. She was testing him, and he was failing spectacularly. The next morning, Nyra attended the pack meeting in his place. She didn't ask permission. She just showed up, and the pack listened. The War Council tent fell silent the moment Nyra walked in. Ronan watched from his corner, his assigned corner, where he sat pretending to review border maps while actually reviewing every single face in the room. As she moved past warriors who had never stepped aside for anyone, they stepped aside for her. She carried nothing, no weapons drawn, no authority declared, just a rolled-up territory dispute file in one hand and a cup of morning tea in the other. Morning, she said casually, and settling into a chair at the table, not the walls, not the back, the table, across from Elder Marlowe. Marlowe blinked. Miss Vale, the Alpha is... Resting. Nyra sipped her tea. I know. He's over there. She nodded vaguely toward Ronan's corner without looking. Looking very restful, very weak, very corner-ish. Ronan's jaw tightened. Two warriors snorted. They never snort at my jokes, Ronan thought. I don't make jokes. But if I did, they wouldn't snort. You can't just... Marlowe started. Eastern Border Patrol schedules, Nyra interrupted smoothly, unrolling her file. The rotation has 3 gaps. 3 different families are claiming hunting rights to the same creek, and the trainees sent their advancement requests on parchment that smells like someone's ale stash exploded. She slid papers across the table. I fixed the rotation, marked the creek as shared territory, alternating weeks, enforced by rotating patrols. Awan and the advancement requests are approved pending combat demonstrations next full moon. Silence. Marlowe stared at the papers. The warriors stared at Nyra. Ronan stared at the back of her head and felt something dangerous twisting in his chest. You fixed it? Marlowe asked slowly. Nyra shrugged. Someone had to. The Alpha's resting. She finally glanced toward Ronan's corner, just briefly, just enough for their eyes to meet. Aren't you? Oh, Alpha? Ronan's voice came out rougher than intended. Yes. Good. Stay rested. She turned back to the table. Now, about the Cade family's complaint about the Morrow hunting dogs. 2 hours later, Ronan had moved from his corner to a bench outside the war tent, not because he wanted to leave, because watching Nyra dismantle pack problems with casual efficiency was doing something to his blood pressure that he couldn't medically explain. She listened to warriors who usually stammered through reports. She laughed at Elder Marlowe's terrible hunting stories, actually laughed, like she meant it. She asked questions instead of giving orders, and somehow, impossibly, the answers she got were more detailed than anything Ronan had ever extracted through dominance. Bryce approached her nervously. Nyra smiled. Bryce stopped looking nervous. What, Ronan thought wildly, is happening? She's good. Ronan looked up. Fenris, his second-in-command, a battle-scarred wolf who'd followed Ronan through 3 territory wars, stood beside the bench, also watching the tent. She's adequate, Ronan said flatly. Fenris raised an eyebrow. She solved the Morrow-Cade dispute in 20 minutes. That's been brewing for 6 months. She had good information. She asked the right questions. Fenris crossed his arms. You know what the young wolves are calling her now? Ronan didn't want to know. What? The listener. Something hot and uncomfortable crawled up Ronan's spine. She's a scout. She's a leader. Fenris glanced at him sideways. You picked a strange time to go weak, Alpha. Ronan's hands curled into fists on his knees. I'm not weak. I'm pretending. There's a difference. A very important difference that my wolf is currently ignoring because it's too busy watching her laugh at something Bryce said. Bryce was laughing. Bryce, who hadn't laughed since the eyebrow incident of 2009. She's just approachable, Ronan managed. Fenris snorted. You could be approachable. No, you could try. Absolutely not. You're literally sitting on a bench outside your own war council, watching your pack fall in love with someone else, and you won't even... I'm resting. Fenris stared at him. Ronan stared at the tent. Inside, Nyra looked up suddenly, like she'd felt his gaze, and their eyes met through the open flap. She smiled, small, warm, infuriating. Then she turned back to the council and said something that made the entire table laugh. They never laugh for me, Ronan thought. I don't want them to laugh for me. Laughter is inefficient. Laughter is... His wolf howled. Shut up. By evening, Ronan had developed a twitch in his left eye. He followed the pack to the communal dining hall, because alphas ate with their packs, even resting alphas, even alphas who wanted to throw things, and found his usual seat at the head of the long table already occupied by Nyra. She sat in his chair like she'd been born there, surrounded by warriors and trainees and elders, all of them talking to her like she was the alpha. Ronan stopped in the doorway. The firelight caught her profile. She was laughing at something, head tilted back, throat exposed, completely unguarded, completely safe in the middle of his pack. And his pack, who were choosing to sit with her, who were choosing to talk to her, who were choosing... Bryce slid a plate toward her. The kitchen made extra bread, the good kind, with the honey glaze. Nyra's face lit up. "Bryce, you're my favorite person." Bryce looked like he'd been granted a personal audience with the moon goddess. Ronan's eye twitched again. "That's my bread, not literally, but metaphorically. Well, that's my metaphorical bread, and she's eating it in my chair while my pack watches. She's not sitting in your chair." Ronan hadn't realized he'd spoken aloud until he felt Fenris move up beside him. "I didn't say anything." "Your face said it," Fenris sighed. "Alpha, with respect, what is happening right now?" Ronan watched Nyra break off a piece of honey bread and offer it to Elder Marlowe, who accepted it with the reverence of a man receiving a blessing. "I'm resting," Ronan said through gritted teeth. "You've been resting for exactly 1 day, and your pack has already found a new favorite." "She's not. They don't..." Ronan stopped, dragged a hand down his face. "Why are they laughing? I've never heard them laugh like that." Fenris considered the question. "Probably because she doesn't terrify them." "I don't terrify them. You literally made Bryce cry last week." "With my eyebrow." "Exactly." Fenris clapped him on the shoulder. "Joe, go sit down, eat bread, try not to glare at anyone. You're resting, remember?" Ronan's feet carried him toward the table before his brain could argue. He slid onto the bench at the far end. His usual spot was occupied. His chair was occupied. His everything was occupied, and stared at the food in front of him without seeing it. Across the long table, Nyra glanced up. Their eyes met over the honey bread. She tilted her head slightly, questioning. "Are you okay?" Ronan nodded stiffly. "Fine. Great. Loving this. Absolutely loving watching you steal my pack." Her lips curved. She knew. Somehow, impossibly, she knew exactly what she was doing, and she was enjoying it. Later, much later, after the meal ended and the pack dispersed and Ronan sat alone in the empty hall staring at his chair, like it had personally betrayed him, Nyra found him. She didn't announce herself, just appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame, arms crossed. "You know," she said quietly, "you could sit there even when I'm in it." Ronan looked up. "It's your chair now." "It's a chair. It's the Alpha's chair. It's a piece of wood." She walked closer, stopped beside him, looked down at where he sat on the bench like a discarded warrior instead of a territory leader. "You're really committed to this resting thing, aren't you?" Ronan said nothing. Nyra studied him for a long moment. Then, impossibly, she sat down beside him, on the bench, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "You did good work today," he said quietly. "I know." "Modest. Never." She glanced at him sideways. "You're jealous." His heart stopped. "I'm not. You're sitting in an empty dining hall at midnight staring at a chair you're too proud to take back. That's observant." "I'm a scout." She paused. "Also, your eye has been twitching for 3 hours. Everyone noticed." Ronan closed his eyes, rubbed the bridge of his nose. I'm not jealous. What are you then? Terrified, his wolf whispered. Terrified that they'll choose you over me. Terrified that they already are. Terrified that I want them to, because watching you lead makes my chest hurt in ways I can't explain. I'm resting, he said. Nyra laughed softly, not mocking, just soft. All right, she said. Keep resting. She stood, walked toward the door, paused with her back to him. For what it's worth, Ronan waited. I didn't ask for any of this, on their attention, their trust. She glanced back, moonlight catching her profile. But since you're resting, someone had to step forward. She left. Ronan sat alone in the darkness, her words echoing, his wolf pacing, his chest doing something complicated and painful. Someone had to step forward. He'd wanted her to see him without fear. Instead, she'd seen his pack without him, and they'd chosen her anyway. The next morning, Ronan arrived at the war tent before dawn. Empty, quiet, and he moved to his usual corner, then stopped, looked at the table, at the chair, at its head, at the stack of papers neatly arranged in the center, each one marked with notes in handwriting that wasn't his. He walked to the table, picked up the top paper. Eastern Patrol rotation. Complete. Trainee advancement. Scheduled. Morrowcade dispute. Resolved pending signatures. His chest tightened. She'd done all of this before sunrise. For him, for the pack, and for no reason other than that someone had to step forward. The tent flap rustled. Nyra entered carrying 2 cups of tea. She stopped when she saw him standing at the table. Morning, she said carefully. Ronan held up the papers. You did all of this. I told you. Someone had to step forward. Why? She moved closer, set 1 cup of tea on the table in front of him, kept the other for herself. Because you looked at me like I was the only person in the world who didn't fear you. Her voice was quiet, steady, and I wanted to see what would happen if I stayed. The space between them crackled. Ronan's hand moved before he thought, reaching out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, fingers trailing against her cheek. She didn't pull away, didn't flinch, didn't breathe. Nyra! The tent flap burst open. Bryce stumbled inside, breathless. Alpha, Miss Vale, and the Cade family is... He stopped, stared at Ronan's hand frozen near Nyra's face, stared at Nyra's wide eyes, stared at the tea. The Cade family is... I'll come back. He fled, the moment shattered. Nyra stepped back, just slightly, just enough, and picked up her tea. We should handle the Cades, she said quietly. Ronan's hand fell to his side. Yes. She moved toward the flap, paused, looked back. For what it's worth, Alpha. He waited. Shone, I'm not trying to take your pack. I know. I'm trying to hold it together until you're ready to lead again. She left. Ronan stood alone in the war tent, surrounded by her handwriting, her tea, her scent, her everything. His wolf whined. She's not taking the pack, he realized. She's keeping it warm for me. The jealousy didn't disappear, but something else joined it, something far more dangerous. Hope. That evening, a challenge was issued, not to Nyra, to Ronan. An alpha from a neighboring territory, drawn by rumors of weakness, arrived at Blackthorne's borders with 20 warriors and a single message: face me or step down. And Ronan realized he couldn't fight back without revealing the truth. He couldn't step down without losing everything. He couldn't ask Nyra for help without admitting he'd been pretending all along. But when he turned around, she was already there. armor strapped on, blade in hand. "You're resting," she said flatly. "I'll handle it." The marketplace fell silent, not gradually, instantly, like someone had cut the sound from the world with a blade. Ronan stood at the edge of the cobblestone square, surrounded by stalls selling everything from fresh meat to woven blankets to hand-forged tools, and every single person was staring at him. Not because he was the Alpha, because he was carrying Nyra Vale's shopping bags, 6 of them. His fingers were turning purple. "I said carry them, not strangle them." Nyra's voice came from somewhere to his left. "Relax your grip. You're crushing the bread." Ronan looked down at the bags. The bread was, in fact, being slowly compressed into a dense carbohydrate brick. He loosened his fingers. Better. Nyra appeared beside him, examining a stall's selection of dried herbs. She didn't look at him, didn't acknowledge the 50 pack members frozen in place around them, and didn't react to Elder Margot dropping her basket of apples and simply leaving them on the ground in her shock. She just shopped, like this was normal, like the Alpha of Blackthorne territory wasn't standing behind her holding her groceries. "The rosemary is fresh this week," Nyra murmured to the stall-keeper, an elderly woman whose mouth kept opening and closing like a landed fish. "I'll take 2 bundles." The woman didn't move. 2 bundles, Nyra repeated gently. "Of rosemary." "Yes, right, rosemary." The woman's hands trembled as she gathered the herbs. Her eyes kept darting to Ronan. "Alpha, is everything, do you need—" "I'm carrying bags," Ronan said flatly. "Yes, I see. Bags," the woman swallowed. "Many bags. 6 bags. 6, yes, that's a lot of bags." Nyra hid a smile behind her hand. Ronan saw it anyway. His wolf preened. They moved through the marketplace like a walking contradiction. Nyra walked ahead, relaxed, unhurried, and stopping at stalls that caught her interest. She asked questions about the goods, bargained for better prices, laughed with the vendors like she'd known them for years. Ronan followed 3 steps behind, loaded down like a pack mule, trying to look weak and approachable while carrying enough food to feed a small army. He was failing at both. "She's making the Alpha carry shopping," someone whispered loudly. 6 bags, another voice breathed. "I counted. His knuckles are white. He's going to explode." "The Alpha doesn't explode. The Alpha makes other people explode. He's carrying groceries." The whispers followed them like a tail. Ronan heard every word. His left eye began twitching again. At the fish stall, disaster struck. Nyra paused to examine the morning catch, silver scales gleaming in the sunlight, fresh from the river, and Ronan stopped behind her, bags shifting, trying to find a comfortable position for his rapidly numbing arms. A child darted past, small, fast, completely unaware of the mountain of Alpha directly in her path. She collided with Ronan's legs, bounced off, fell backward. Ronan's instincts screamed. Catch her. Protect. Secure. He dropped 3 bags, caught the child by the back of her shirt, lifted her gently to her feet, set her down, checked for injury, found none, looked up. The entire marketplace was staring. The child's mother stood frozen 10 feet away, face pale, clearly calculating whether to run or bow, or simply perish on the spot. The child herself, a girl of perhaps 6 with wild dark curls and fearless eyes, tilted her head back to look at Ronan's face. "You're big," she announced. Ronan blinked. "Yes, like a mountain." Some have said, "Mountains don't carry groceries." Ronan had no response to this. The girl studied him for another long moment. Then she smiled. Tooth gap. He bright eyes, completely unafraid, and said, "You're nice." She ran back to her mother. The mother grabbed her hand and fled. Ronan stood surrounded by spilled vegetables, 3 abandoned bags, and the weight of 50 pack members trying very hard not to laugh. Behind him, Nyra made a sound. He turned. She was shaking. Not with fear. With laughter she was desperately trying to suppress. She choked. "You're nice." She said you're nice. A child called the Alpha nice. She's 6. Hun, she doesn't know anything. She knows mountains don't carry groceries. Nyra lost the battle entirely. Laughter spilled out of her, bright and real and devastating. She's never been more correct about anything in her life. Ronan stared at her, at the way her eyes crinkled, at the way her shoulders shook, at the way the sunlight caught the few stray hairs escaping her braid. His wolf went very, very still. Mine. He crushed the thought immediately. But not before Nyra caught something in his expression. Her laughter faded slowly, replaced by something softer, more curious. "What?" she asked quietly. "Nothing. You're staring." "I'm resting my eyes." "Your eyes are open. Resting them open." Nyra's lips curved. "Pick up the vegetables, Mountain." Ronan bent to retrieve the scattered produce and realized, too late, that he'd just obeyed an order. In front of everyone, his wolf celebrated. "Stay." They reached the edge of the marketplace an hour later. Ronan's arms had gone numb. Approximately 30 minutes ago, he'd stopped feeling his fingers entirely. The bags had multiplied somehow. He was certain he'd started with 6, but now there were at least 8, possibly 9, and one of them contained something wet that was slowly soaking through the fabric against his hip. Nyra walked slightly ahead, lighter without the burden, pausing occasionally to glance back at him. "You can set those down, you know." "No. You're turning blue. Blue is a strong color. Your fingers are purple." "Purple is royal." Nyra stopped walking, turned fully toward him. Ronan stopped too, bag swinging, wet things squelching. "You're enjoying this," she said slowly. "I'm not. You're enjoying carrying my groceries through a marketplace full of people who've never seen you do anything but terrify them." Ronan said nothing. Nyra stepped closer. Close enough that he could smell her again. Night air and pine and something warm. Even in the middle of the day, even surrounded by fish and bread and herbs. "Your wolf is happy," she said softly. Not a question, a statement. Ronan's throat went dry. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." Her eyes held his, steady, unafraid, seeing him in a way no one else ever had. "You've been following me for 3 hours, carrying things, letting me order you around. And every time I look at you, your wolf is shining through your eyes." He should deny it, should step back, should remember that this was supposed to be a test, that he was pretending to be weak, not actually becoming weak, not actually enjoying. "Nyra, Mountain." He stopped. "I'm not trying to break you." Her voice dropped lower, private, just for him. I'm just showing you what it looks like when someone doesn't run." The wet thing squelched again. Neither of them looked away. "You're not afraid of me," he said quietly. "No. Everyone is afraid of me." "I know. Why aren't you?" Nyra considered the question. Her gaze drifted over his face, the sharp jaw, the hard eyes, the mouth that hadn't smiled in longer than he could remember. "Because I saw you catch that child," she said finally, before she hit the ground, before she even knew she was falling. "You moved faster than anyone in that marketplace could see." She paused. "Mountains don't move like that." Mountains don't catch falling things. Ronan's heart slammed against his ribs. Mountains just stand there, she continued, crush things, block the sun. She stepped closer, one step, just one, but it felt like crossing a chasm. You're not a mountain, Ronan. No one called him by his name. No one. What am I then? The words came out rougher than he intended. Raw. Nyra reached up, slowly, giving him time to pull away. He didn't move. Her fingers touched his cheek, barely there. A whisper of warmth against skin that suddenly felt too tight. I don't know yet, she admitted, but I'd like to find out. The marketplace noise faded. The bags didn't exist. The wet thing could have been on fire and Ronan wouldn't have noticed, because Nyra Vale was touching his face, in public, voluntarily, and his wolf had stopped pacing and started purring. I'm going to kiss you. The words left his mouth before he could stop them. Nyra's eyes widened slightly, her hand stilled against his cheek. What? I'm going to kiss you, he repeated. Not now, not here, but eventually. I'm going to kiss you until you forget your own name. Her breath caught. That's very direct. I'm an alpha. We're direct. You're carrying my groceries. Alphas carry things. You're resting. Apparently not anymore. Nyra's lips parted. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, want, fear. Before she stepped back, her hand dropped. The distance returned. You should put those bags down before your fingers fall off, she said quietly. Ronan looked at his hands. Purple. Definitely purple. Possibly necrotic. He set the bags on the ground, looked back up. Nyra was already walking away, toward the pack house, toward safety, toward somewhere that wasn't here with him and his inappropriate confessions. But she paused at the path's edge, glanced back. The answer, she called softly, is yes. Then she disappeared around the corner. Ronan stood alone with 8 bags of groceries and a wolf that was screaming internally. Yes. She'd said yes. Yes. He found her that evening at the training grounds. She was sparring alone, moving through forms with a blade, moonlight catching the steel, breath misting in the cold air. Ronan watched from the shadows, didn't approach, didn't announce himself, just watched. Because for the first time in his life, and he didn't know what to do next, the plan had been simple. Pretend to be weak, let her approach, reveal the truth. The plan had not accounted for her becoming the heart of his pack. The plan had not accounted for her touching his face like he was something precious. The plan had not accounted for his wolf choosing her without permission. You can come out, Nyra said without stopping her forms. I know you're there. Ronan stepped into the moonlight. She didn't turn and just kept moving. Strike, block, pivot, strike. Flawless. You're good at that, he said. I know. Modest. Never. She finally stopped, turned, faced him with the blade still in her hand. Did you come to spar or to stare? Both. She tossed him a second blade from the weapons rack. He caught it one-handed. The moment their hands touched, blade hilt to blade hilt, leather to leather, something sparked between them. Nyra felt it too. He saw it in her eyes. First blood? She asked softly. I don't want to draw yours. Confident. Certain. They moved at the same time. Blades met. Sparks flew. Feet shifted in the packed earth. She was faster than he expected, much faster, and she used it. Quick strikes, constant movement, never staying in one place long enough for him to counter. He blocked, dodged, defended, didn't attack. You're holding back. She breathed between strikes. I'm resting. You're lying. Her blade sliced toward his ribs. He caught her wrist, pulled her close. They stood chest to chest, blade tips pressed against each other's throats, breath mingling in the cold air. First blood, Ronan murmured. Nyra's eyes dropped to his mouth, lifted back to his eyes. Draw it yourself, she whispered. The challenge hung between them. Ronan's blade pressed slightly, just slightly against her skin. Not enough to cut, enough to feel her pulse racing beneath the steel. One day, he said quietly, I'm going to stop pretending. Pretending what? That I don't want this. He released her wrist, stepped back, lowered his blade. That I don't want you. Nyra stood frozen, moonlight catching the rise and fall of her chest. You're still holding back, so, she said. Yes. Why? Because if I stop, he thought, I won't be able to start again. Because if I kiss you now, I'll never stop. Because my wolf has already chosen you, and if I let myself feel it fully, I'll burn alive. I'm resting, he said instead. She laughed, soft and broken and real. You're impossible. I know. She sheathed her blade, walked toward him, stopped inches away, reached up, grabbed his shirt, pulled him down, pressed her lips to his cheek, just once, just briefly, just a whisper of contact, then released him, stepped back. Good night, mountain, she walked away. Ronan stood frozen, and one hand lifted halfway to his face, touching the spot where her lips had been. His wolf had stopped screaming. It was singing. The next morning, the neighboring Alpha's challenge arrived. Not at the borders, at the pack house door, delivered by a trembling messenger who didn't survive long enough to deliver it properly. But the message was clear. Face me by moonrise or Blackthorne falls. Ronan read the words, looked at Nyra. She was already reaching for her blade. You're resting, she said flatly. I'll handle it. No. She froze. No? Ronan stood, rolled his shoulders, felt the strength he'd been hiding surge through his veins like returning home. No. Nyra's eyes widened. Ronan, I'm done resting. You cannot make me nervous. Ronan paused mid-stride, turned slowly. Nyra stood in the doorway of the war tent, arms crossed, chin lifted, eyes sparkling with something that looked dangerously like a challenge. I'm sorry? You heard me. She walked past him, close, too close, close enough that her scent wrapped around him like smoke, and settled into his chair at the head of the table. Everyone thinks you're terrifying, intimidating. I'm the great Alpha who makes warriors cry with one eyebrow. Ronan's left eye twitched. I'm not making that a thing. It's a thing. She leaned back, completely at ease, completely relaxed, completely in his chair. But me? I've seen you carry groceries. I've seen you get called nice by a 6-year-old. I've seen you hold 8 bags until your fingers turned purple because I told you to. That was strategic weakness? She tilted her head. Or just weakness? Ronan's jaw tightened. Not from anger, from something far more dangerous. Desire. She was baiting him, and his wolf was loving it. You think I can't make you nervous, he said slowly. I know you can't. She picked up a report from the table, started reading, dismissed him completely. You're a mountain. Mountains don't fluster people. They just stand there, blocking things, being rocky. Ronan moved, not fast, slow, deliberate, predatory, circling the table toward her chair. Nyra didn't look up from her report. Territory reports from the eastern border, she murmured. Apparently, the Cade family's hunting dogs have developed a taste for marrow chickens. Again. Ronan stopped behind her chair, close enough to feel the warmth of her. close enough to see the way her pulse fluttered at her throat, even as her face stayed perfectly calm. "Chickens," he repeated. "Mm-hmm. And dogs. Dogs who really like chickens." Ronan leaned down, just slightly, just enough that his breath stirred the hair at her temple. "And you're not nervous at all." Nyra's hand tightened on the report, just slightly, just briefly, before relaxing again. "I'm reading about chicken theft, Ronan. Thrilling stuff." His name in her mouth did something to his chest. He filed that information away for later. "The Morrow family, Tina," he murmured, "has 14 chickens. The Cade family has 3 dogs. If each dog eats 1 chicken per day, they'd run out in 5 days, and math isn't the problem." She finally looked up, met his eyes, held them. "The problem is that the Morrows are claiming the Cades are letting the dogs roam specifically to steal food, and the Cades are claiming the Morrows' fence is inadequate." Ronan didn't move, didn't step back, just stayed close, too close. "You've read the reports," he said quietly. "Yes." "Made notes, obviously." "Solved the problem already." Her lips twitched. "The Morrows need better fencing. The Cades need to control their dogs during daylight hours, split the cost of both, enforce with rotating patrols. Done." Ronan studied her face, the steady eyes, the calm expression, the pulse at her throat that was definitely beating faster than it had been 30 seconds ago. "You're very good at this," he said. "I know." Modest. "Never." His hand moved, slowly, giving her time to pull away. It settled on the back of her chair, just behind her shoulder, not touching, close enough to feel the heat between them. Nyra's breath caught, just slightly, just briefly. Then she looked back at her report. "Your hand is on my chair." "It's my chair. You gave it to me. I loaned it. Loans imply expected return. I expect to return." His voice dropped lower. "Eventually." The silence stretched, crackled, burned. Nyra turned another page. Her fingers were steady, but the air between them had changed. An hour later, Ronan stood at the training grounds, watching warriors spar, not because he needed to supervise, because Nyra was there. She'd moved from the war tent to the training circle, and now she was sparring with Bryce of all people. Bryce, who still flinched when Ronan looked at him, and somehow making it look effortless. She dodged, weaved, countered. Bryce never landed a hit. "You're not watching the warriors." Fenris appeared at Ronan's side. "I'm watching all the warriors." "You're watching one warrior, specifically, repeatedly, with an expression that concerns me." Ronan didn't look away from the training circle. "I don't have expressions." "You have that expression, the one where you look like you're calculating something complicated while also wanting to bite someone. That's not." She just flipped Bryce onto his back. "Did you see that?" Ronan had seen it. Nyra stood over Bryce, one hand extended to help him up. Laughing at something he said, Bryce took her hand, smiled, actually smiled. Bryce never smiled. "The chickens," Ronan said abruptly. Fenris blinked. "What?" "The Cade dogs, the Morrow chickens." She solved it in. He checked an imaginary watch. "Minutes, okay?" She solves everything. The disputes, the schedules, the trainees, He stopped, dragged a hand down his face. "She told me I can't make her nervous." Fenris was quiet for a long moment. Then, is this a competition to you?" "No, because it sounds like you're trying to make her nervous." "I'm not trying." Ronan stopped, considered. "I'm strategically assessing her claim by staring at her." by observing for an hour. Strategic observation requires... She's looking at you. Ronan's eyes snapped back to the training circle. Nyra had stopped mid-spar, was watching him across the distance, arms loose at her sides, face unreadable. Then she smiled, slow, deliberate, challenging, and mouthed 3 words, still not nervous. Ronan's wolf growled. That evening, he found her in the library. The pack library was a small room. Warm fire, worn chairs, shelves stuffed with everything from territory histories to romance novels that someone had definitely hidden behind the legal codes. Nyra sat in the largest armchair, legs tucked under her, reading by firelight. She didn't look up when he entered. "You're lurking," she said. "Why, I'm browsing." "There's nothing to browse. You own everything here." "I'm browsing my possessions," her lips curved. "Possessions don't lurk. They do if they're strategic." She finally looked up. The firelight caught her face, warmth in her eyes, shadows under her cheekbones, a single strand of hair escaping her braid. "Still on this?" she asked. "You made a claim. I made an observation. Claims require evidence. And you're collecting evidence by..." "I'm standing in the doorway." Ronan moved, crossed the room, settled into the armchair across from hers, close, too close, knees almost touching in the small space. "I'm collecting evidence," he agreed, "by being near you." Nyra's eyes flickered, just slightly, just briefly. Then she went back to her book. "Well, be near then. I'm reading." "What are you reading?" "A history of the Eastern Territories. Fascinating stuff. Border disputes, resource allocation, and the Great Berry War of '72. There was no Great Berry War. There was absolutely a Great Berry War. It's in chapter 4. She turned a page. "Very bloody. Very berry." Ronan watched her, the way her lips moved slightly as she read, the way her fingers traced the page edges, the way her breathing changed when he didn't look away. "You're staring," she said without looking up. "I'm observing. Observation requires blinking." "I blink internally." "Your internal blinks are insufficient." She turned another page. The fire crackled. The silence stretched. And Ronan noticed something. Her pulse, at her throat, fluttering. Interesting. The next morning, he escalated. Nyra was reviewing patrol schedules in the war tent when Ronan entered with 2 cups of tea. He set one in front of her. She looked up, surprised. "Oh, you brought me tea?" "I bring tea to people who aren't nervous." That's not a thing. It's a new thing." He settled into the chair beside her, not across, beside, close enough that their elbows almost touched. "I invented it." Nyra stared at the tea, then at him, then at the tea again. "You're trying to fluster me with tea." "I'm trying to be thoughtful. You're trying to be strategic." "Same thing." She laughed, short, surprised, genuine, and picked up the cup. Ann took a sip, closed her eyes briefly. "Okay," she admitted. "This is really good tea." "I know. Modest. Never." She drank more tea. Ronan watched her throat move as she swallowed. His wolf purred. "When you're done being thoughtful," she said, setting down the cup. "The Eastern Patrol reports need signatures." Ronan picked up the reports, didn't look at them, looked at her. "Sign them for me." Nyra blinked. "What?" "You sign them. You've already reviewed them. You've already fixed whatever needed fixing." He slid the papers toward her. "Sign." "I can't sign Alpha reports." "Why not?" "Because I'm not." She stopped, looked at the papers, looked at him. "You're serious." "I'm always serious." "You're strategic." "Same thing." She stared at him for a long moment, then picked up the pen, signed her name, slid the papers back. There, signed, happy. Ronan looked at her signature, Nyra Vale, beneath his, on an Alpha report. His wolf did something complicated and warm. Very, he said quietly. Nyra's breath caught, just slightly, just briefly, but he heard it. By midday, the entire pack had noticed. She's signing Alpha reports now, someone whispered in the dining hall. He brought her tea. Tea? With honey, I saw. The Alpha doesn't do honey. The Alpha doesn't do a lot of things. Apparently he does them now. Ronan ignored the whispers. He was too busy watching Nyra eat lunch. She sat with the younger wolves, trainees, scouts, the ones who used to flinch when he walked past, and they were laughing with her, sharing food with her, leaning in to hear her stories. She caught him watching, raised an eyebrow, still not nervous. Ronan stood, crossed the hall, moved directly to her table. The young wolves froze. Nyra didn't. Alpha, she said mildly. Hungry? Thirsty. He reached past her, close, too close, his chest nearly brushing her shoulder, and picked up the water pitcher from the center of the table. Thirst is strategic. He poured himself water, didn't move away, stood beside her chair, looking down at her, close enough that her scent wrapped around him completely. The young wolves exchanged panicked glances. Nyra took another bite of bread. Your water, she said. What? You got water, and you can go now. I'm drinking it. Drink faster. Thirst requires patience. Her jaw tightened, just slightly, just briefly. Progress. That evening she cornered him, literally. He was walking toward his quarters when she stepped out of the shadows, grabbed his shirt, and pushed him against the wall. Ronan's back hit the wood. Nyra's hand stayed fisted in his shirt. Her face was inches from his. You, she said flatly, are insufferable. I'm strategic. You're annoying. Same thing. It's not the same thing. She shook him slightly, which was adorable, given that he had 100 pounds on her. You've been doing this for 2 days. The tea, the standing close, the looking at me like you're... She stopped, swallowed. Like you're... Like I'm what? Her eyes dropped to his mouth, lifted back to his eyes. Like you're hungry, she whispered. The word hung between them. Ronan's hands moved before he thought, settling on her waist, gentle, barely there, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Nyra. Ronan. You said I couldn't make you nervous. I said you couldn't. Are you nervous right now? Her breath hitched. Yes, she admitted. Terrified, actually. His heart stopped. Of me? No. She leaned closer, just slightly, just enough that their lips were a breath apart. Of how much I want you to stop strategizing and just... The door at the end of the hall opened. Footsteps, voices. Nyra released him instantly, stepped back, looked everywhere but his face. She gestured vaguely. Patrols, schedules, chickens. She fled. Ronan stayed against the wall, chest heaving, hands still warm from where she'd been. His wolf was howling. He found her an hour later, on the cliffs, alone, moonlight painting her silver. She didn't turn when he approached. You found me, she said quietly. I'm strategic. You're predictable. I'm consistent. She laughed softly, shook her head. You're impossible. Ronan moved to stand beside her, looked out at the territory below, the lights of the pack house, the dark line of the forest, the distant mountains. I'm sorry, he said. She glanced at him. For what? For making you nervous. I said you couldn't. You said a lot of things. He turned to face her. You also said you're terrified of wanting me to stop strategizing. She winced. You heard that? I hear everything you say. That's concerning. I know. He stepped closer. I'm not going to kiss you. Her eyes widened. You're not? Not yet. Why not? Because when I do, he reached up, touched her face, gently, reverently. I want you to be sure, not terrified, not nervous. Sure. Nyra stared at him, the moonlight, the wind, the warmth of his hand on her skin. I'm sure, she whispered. Ronan's wolf screamed. He didn't move. Not yet, he repeated. Soon, but not yet. Why? Because you deserve to know everything first, her brow furrowed. Know what? Ronan's hand dropped. He stepped back, looked at her with something raw and vulnerable in his eyes. Who I really am, he said quietly. Not the resting alpha, not the grocery carrier, not the strategist. He paused. The truth. Nyra's expression shifted. Confusion, curiosity, something that looked almost like fear. What truth? Ronan opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. And from the pack house below, a horn sounded, warning, attack. Nyra's head snapped toward the sound, toward the territory, toward the threat. When she looked back, Ronan was already gone. At the borders, 20 warriors waited. Their alpha stood at their head, grinning. Where's the weakling? He called. I've come to collect his territory. Ronan stepped out of the trees, alone. I'm here. The enemy alpha laughed, stopped laughing. Because Ronan wasn't weak, had never been weak, and behind him, emerging from the shadows with a blade in each hand, Nyra. You're resting, she said flatly. I told you, I'll handle it. Ronan glanced back at her, smiled. I'm done resting. So am I. They moved as one. The war tent fell silent the moment Ronan walked in. Not because of him, because Nyra was already there. She sat at the head of the table, his head of the table, surrounded by warriors who hadn't bothered to wait for their alpha before starting the morning meeting. Eastern patrols need reinforcement, Bryce was saying, pointing at a map. Nyra suggested rotating the night watch between 3 teams instead of 2. Less burnout, better coverage. Elder Marlowe nodded. Makes sense. Nyra, did you calculate the manpower overlap? 72% efficiency increase. She slid a paper toward him. Numbers are there. Ronan stood in the entrance, watching, counting. 3 warriors hadn't noticed him yet. 2 more had noticed but hadn't stopped talking. Bryce was still talking, completely comfortable, completely relaxed, completely unafraid in a room where the alpha stood unacknowledged. She also fixed the Cade Morrow situation, someone added. Chickens haven't been stolen in 3 days. The dogs are sad, Nyra admitted, but the Morrows shared their eggs as compensation. Everyone's happy. Laughter, actual laughter, at a war council meeting. Ronan's left eye began twitching. He sat in his corner, not by choice, by observation. Strategic observation. The kind of observation that let him mentally update his internal loyalty statistics while pretending to review border maps. Bryce, formerly 40% loyal, fear-based. Well, currently 85% loyal to Nyra. Trend, catastrophic. Elder Marlowe, formerly 90% loyal, respect-based. Currently 60% loyal to him, 75% loyal to Nyra. Overlap, concerning. Fenris, formerly 100% loyal. Brotherhood. Currently watching him with an expression that clearly says, "I told you so." "She's not stealing them," Fenris murmured, appearing beside his corner without warning. Ronan didn't jump. Alphas didn't jump. "I'm aware." "You're updating statistics in your head." "I'm reviewing maps." "Your maps are upside down." Ronan looked down. His maps were, in fact, upside down. He turned them right side up. Fenris said nothing, which was somehow worse. The meeting ended 47 minutes later. Ronan knew because he counted every single second. Nyra stood, stretched, and finally, looked toward his corner. Their eyes met. She smiled, small, warm, completely unrepentant. "Morning. We Alpha," she called across the room. "Hope you rested well." The warriors turned, looked at him, looked back at her. She'd been running their meeting for an hour and they hadn't even noticed he was gone. "I rested," Ronan said flatly. "Good. The Eastern Patrol changes need your signature." She walked toward him, through the warriors who parted for her like water, and set a stack of papers on the table beside him. Also the trainee advancements. Also the new hunting rotation. Ronan looked at the stack, then at her, then at the warriors who were still watching. "You did all of this." "Someone had to." "Before breakfast?" "Tea is breakfast." She tilted her head. "You look concerned." "I'm observing." "You're counting." "I don't count." "You absolutely count. Your lips move." She leaned closer, close enough that only he could hear. "For what it's worth, they still respect you." Ronan's throat tightened. "And do they?" "They're just—" She glanced back at the warriors who immediately pretended not to be watching. "They're not afraid anymore. That's all. Fear has its uses. Fear has limits." She met his eyes again. "You taught them to obey. I'm teaching them to think. We're a good team." She walked away. Ronan watched her go. His wolf approved, loudly. By midday, he'd developed a system. Every time a warrior approached Nyra instead of him, he made a mental note. Every time they asked her opinion before his, he added a tally. Every time she solved a problem he would have solved with dominance, and she solved with listening, he updated the appropriate category. Category 1. Problems solved through terror. Historical average, 94%. Category 2. Problems solved through listening. Nyra's average, 100%. Category 3. Problems. Ronan could have solved faster if people weren't so busy being comfortable. The numbers were not in his favor. The afternoon brought disaster. He was walking through the training grounds, strategically observing, definitely not looking for anyone specific, when he heard laughter. Not just laughter. Nyra's laughter. She sat on a bench near the sparring circle, surrounded by at least 12 young wolves, trainees, scouts, the future of his pack, all of them looking at her like she'd hung the moon. And then he said, "Bread belongs on the floor." More laughter. Ronan stopped walking. When that was his story, that was his embarrassing moment. That was him being mocked in front of his own pack. He was so serious, Nyra continued, eyes bright with mischief. Just standing there, holding bread, telling these two terrified trainees that floors are where bread lives. A young wolf, barely 16, female, clearly starstruck, leaned forward. Was he trying to be funny? I don't think Ronan knows how to try to be funny. It's either intimidating or unintentionally ridiculous. There's no in-between. "He carried your groceries," another offered. 8 bags, Nyra confirmed. His fingers turned purple. "Purple is royal," someone muttered, and the group dissolved again. Ronan's eye twitched. Those were my words, my defense of my grocery carrier honor. She's using my material against me. She's telling stories about you. Fenris appeared at his side. The pack loves it. They're mocking me. They're humanizing you. There's a difference. I don't want to be humanized. I want to be feared. No, you don't. Fenris nodded toward the group. Look at them. Ronan looked. The young wolves were relaxed, open, laughing without hiding it, leaning into each other, sharing something warm and real. When's the last time you saw a trainee laugh? Fenris asked quietly. Ronan didn't answer, because he couldn't remember. She's not stealing them, Fenris continued. She's showing them, and showing them that the alpha they follow is also someone who says ridiculous things and carries groceries and doesn't know how to blink properly. I blink. You blink internally. Apparently. Ronan's jaw tightened, but he didn't walk away. He stayed, watching Nyra make his pack love her, watching his pack be happy, watching something shift inside his chest that felt terrifyingly like gratitude. That evening she found him on the cliffs, same place as before, same moonlight, same electric tension. You've been counting again, she said, settling onto the grass beside him. I don't count. Your eye twitches when you count. My eye twitches when I think. About numbers? About statistics? She laughed softly, leaned back on her hands, looked up at the stars. How bad is it? Ronan was quiet for a long moment. Bryce hasn't made eye contact with me in 3 days. He's scared of you. He used to be scared of me and made eye contact. Now he just asks you things. About everything. He asked you about hunting routes this morning. I've been alpha for 10 years. I know hunting routes. Nyra turned her head to look at him. You're jealous. I'm observing. You're jealous of a 19-year-old warrior who cries when you raise your eyebrow. He doesn't cry anymore. He laughs, with you, at my bread statements. Nyra's lips curved. Oh, your bread statements are funny. They're not meant to be funny. That's what makes them funny. Ronan stared at the stars. His wolf was doing something complicated, jealousy and pride and want all tangled together. Elder Marlowe asked your opinion on the patrol rotation, he said quietly, before he asked mine. Elder Marlowe is set in his ways. He wanted confirmation. He wanted your confirmation. He wanted efficiency. He wanted you. Nyra was quiet. Amasa Ronan. What? Look at me. He looked. She was closer than he'd realized. Close enough to touch, close enough to kiss, close enough that her breath ghosted warm against his skin. I'm not trying to take your pack. I know. I'm trying to help you keep them. I know that too. Then why are you sitting here counting loyalty statistics like I'm stealing something? Ronan's throat worked, because the answer was complicated, because the answer was terrifying, because the truth was, I don't know how to share, he admitted. The words fell between them like stones. Nyra didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't look away. Share what? Everything. He dragged a hand down his face. The pack, the decisions, the space. I've been alone at the top for so long that watching them choose you feels like... He stopped, swallowed. Like I'm disappearing. Nyra's expression softened. Oh, mountain. She reached up, cupped his face in both hands, and forced him to meet her eyes. You're not disappearing. You're expanding. The pack isn't choosing me over you. They're choosing us. Together. As a unit. As something new. Ronan's heart slammed against his ribs. Us? Don't get smug. I'm not proposing. But her thumbs traced his cheekbones gently. I'm explaining. There's a difference. What's the difference? Proposals involve rings. I can get rings. Ronan. Many rings. Oh, all the rings. She laughed, bright and surprised and real, and dropped her forehead to his. Stop counting statistics. She whispered. Impossible. Stop being jealous of yourself. Also impossible. Then at least, she lifted her head, met his eyes. At least trust that I'm not going anywhere. The word settled into his chest. Warm, permanent, dangerous. Nyra, I'm here, she said simply. I chose your pack. I chose you. Before I knew you were strong. Before I knew any of it. And I chose the grocery carrying, bread on the floor, internally blinking mountain who followed me through the marketplace like a lost wolf. Ronan's breath caught. You chose you. She smiled, soft, terrifying. So stop counting, start trusting, and maybe, she leaned closer. Maybe kiss me before I change my mind. He didn't hesitate, didn't strategize, didn't count. He kissed her, and the world stopped. They broke apart, breathless. Nyra's hands were fisted in his shirt. His were buried in her hair. The moonlight painted them silver. Finally, she whispered, Too long? Much too long. I was strategizing. You were wasting time. I'll make it up to you. How? He kissed her again, softer this time, slower, reverent. When they broke apart again, she was smiling. Okay, she admitted. That's a good start. Ronan's chest felt too full, too warm, too much. I love you, he said. The words left his mouth before he could stop them. Nyra froze. Her eyes went wide. What? He stopped, swallowed, considered retracting, considered running. I love you. I don't know when it happened. I don't know how. But you walked into my war tent and sat in my chair and started fixing everything, and my wolf sang, and He stopped. I love you. Silence. The wind moved through the cliffs. The stars watched. Nyra's eyes glistened. You're impossible, she whispered. I know. You can't just... She laughed, wet and broken. You can't just say that. Here, now, when I'm not ready. When will you be ready? I don't know. She touched his face again. But I know I'm not going anywhere. Ronan closed his eyes, breathed her in, let the words settle. When he opened them again, she was still there, still real, still his. I'm done pretending, he said quietly. Done resting, done hiding. Took her hand, held it against his chest where his heart was pounding. Tomorrow, I faced the challenge. No more weakness, no more strategy, just the truth, the truth. Nyra studied his face, then smiled. Good. Why good? Because I've been waiting for the real you to show up. Ronan's heart stopped. Nyra. And for the record, she squeezed his hand. I love you too, even when you're ridiculous, especially when you're ridiculous. His wolf howled. He kissed her again, and again, and again, until the moon climbed high and the stars blurred and nothing existed except her. Dust. The next morning, Ronan walked into the war tent alone. Nyra was already there, sitting in his chair, surrounded by warriors. She looked up when he entered, smiled. Morning, Alpha. Ready for the challenge? Ronan looked at his pack, at his woman, at everything he'd almost lost by pretending. Ready. But when he turned to leave, Nyra stood, moved to his side, took his hand. We're ready. The warriors exchanged glances, then stood, one by one, falling into formation behind them, behind her, and Ronan realized she hadn't stolen his pack. She'd united it, around both of them. The challenge was over. Ronan stood on the Blackthorne cliffs, blood still drying on his knuckles, staring at the moon. He'd won. Of course he'd won. The neighboring Alpha lay unconscious at the border, his warriors retreating with their tails between their legs, and Blackthorne stood stronger than ever. But Ronan hadn't come here to celebrate. He'd come here to breathe. "You're bleeding on the rocks." He didn't turn, didn't need to. He'd felt her approach 5 minutes ago, her scent on the wind, her footsteps in the grass, her heartbeat steady and sure. "Minor," he said. Nyra moved to stand beside him. Close, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "Your knuckles are split open. They'll heal. By morning, by dawn." She was quiet for a moment. Then she reached down, took his hand, and lifted it between them. Ronan's breath caught. Her fingers were warm, gentle, tracing the torn skin without flinching. "You fought well today," she murmured. "I fought. You won. The pack won. The pack watched you destroy an alpha twice your size without breaking a sweat." She glanced up at him. "You're not weak, Ronan. I know. Then why—" She stopped, swallowed. "Why did you pretend?" The question hung between them, heavier than the moonlight, warmer than her hand in his. Ronan looked out at the territory below. The pack house lights flickered like stars. The forest stretched dark and endless. His home, his everything. "I wanted you to see me without fear," he said quietly. Nyra's fingers stilled on his hand. "What?" He turned to face her fully, and the moonlight caught her face, the curve of her cheek, the softness of her mouth, the confusion in her eyes. "I've spent 10 years building fear, Tio," he admitted. "Every warrior who looks at me sees their alpha. Every wolf who speaks to me measures their words. Every moment of my life is filtered through what I am, not who." Nyra said nothing, just watched him, listened. "You walked into my territory and didn't flinch," he continued. "You looked at me like I was normal, like I was just some man, some annoying man who carried your groceries and said ridiculous things about bread." Her lips twitched. "Bread does belong on the floor. Shut up. Make me," the words sparked between them. Ronan's wolf growled. He didn't move. "I pretended to be weak," he said slowly. Because I wanted to know if you'd choose me when I wasn't terrifying." Nyra's expression shifted, softened, broke slightly. "Oh, Mountain." She stepped closer, still holding his hand, still touching him. "You are terrifying," she said. His chest tightened. "I know. You could crush me without trying. Yes, your resting face makes trainees cry. I'm aware. Your eyebrow has a body count. Allegedly." She laughed, soft, wet, real, and shook her head. "And I like you anyway." Ronan's heart stopped. "Nyra, do you know why?" He couldn't speak, could only shake his head. She lifted his hand, the injured one, the bloody one, the one that had just destroyed an enemy alpha, and pressed it against her chest, right over her heart. It pounded against his palm, fast, steady, for him. "Because this," she whispered. "And because you stand on cliffs and bleed and worry about whether I'll choose you. Because you carried my groceries until your fingers turned purple. Because you let me sit in your chair and fix your pack and tell your embarrassing stories." Her eyes glistened. "Because you're afraid, Ronan, terrified, of losing me, of losing them, of being seen as something other than the alpha." She squeezed his hand. "And you stay anyway." The wind moved through the cliffs. The moon watched. Ronan's wolf had stopped pacing and started weeping. "You're not afraid of me," he managed. "No. Everyone is afraid of me." "I know. Why?" She considered the question. Her thumb traced circles on his knuckles. Because I've seen you catch falling children. Because I've watched you follow me through markets like a lost wolf. Because you told me you love me on these cliffs like it was a confession instead of a gift. She stepped closer, inches apart, breath mingling. You're terrifying, she repeated softly, but you're also good, and I think, she swallowed. I think that's the part you're most afraid of. Ronan's free hand moved, lifted to her face, cupped her cheek like she was made of moonlight. Nyra. Ronan. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Be seen. Be known. Be... He stopped, struggled. Be loved without armor. Her eyes went liquid. Then learn, she whispered. I'm not going anywhere. He kissed her, slow, soft, reverent. Her hand slid up his chest, wrapped around his neck, pulled him closer. The world faded. The territory didn't matter. The pack didn't exist. There was only her, only them. Now when they broke apart, she was smiling. You're still bleeding on the rocks, she murmured. Don't care. You should. Rocks are expensive. We own the rocks. Then you should care more. I care about... He stopped, looked at her. I care about you. Her smile softened. I know. That's it. That's the whole thing. That's the truth I've been hiding. She reached up, traced his jaw, followed the line to his chin, to his lips. You're really bad at this, she said gently. At what? Being vulnerable. I'm learning. You're learning, she agreed, slowly, painfully, with a lot of brooding. Brooding is strategic. Brooding is dramatic. Same thing, she laughed, pressed her forehead to his. I love you, she said quietly. Even when you're dramatic, especially when you're dramatic. His heart sang. As I love you too. Good. 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 She pulled back slightly, looked at him with something fierce and warm in her eyes. Now let's get your hand cleaned up before you bleed on any more expensive rocks. She tugged him toward the path. He followed, like he always would, like he wanted to. They walked in silence through the forest, her hand in his, the moon guiding them. Halfway to the pack house, she stopped, turned, looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. What? He asked. I just realized something. What? You never answered my question. Ronan's brow furrowed. Which question? Before the challenge, on the cliffs, she stepped closer. I asked why you pretended to be weak. You said you wanted me to see you without fear. Yes. But that's not the whole truth, is it? Ronan went still, when his wolf froze. Ronan. Her voice was soft, gentle, dangerous. What else? The silence stretched, crackled, burned. I wanted to know, he said finally, if I could be loved without my power. Nyra's breath caught. I wanted to know if there was anything left of me without the fear, without the dominance, without the alpha. He swallowed. I wanted to know if I was enough. Just me. Just Ronan. Her eyes glistened. And? He looked at her, at the woman who'd walked into his war tent and sat in his chair, at the woman who'd made his pack laugh, at the woman who'd touched his face on these cliffs and called him good. You, he said quietly, you are enough. She broke, not loudly, not dramatically, just tears sliding down her cheeks, a smile trembling on her lips. You idiot, she whispered. I know. You ridiculous, grocery-carrying, bread-on-the-floor idiot. I know. She kissed him, hard, desperate, real. When they broke apart, she was laughing and crying at the same time. You're enough, she said fiercely. You've always been enough. The power, the pack, the territory. That's all extra. That's all bonus. I chose you when you were carrying my groceries. I chose you when you were sitting in corners looking pathetic. I chose you when you were resting." His throat tightened. "Nyra, I chose you," she repeated. "Not the Alpha, not the mountain. You." He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair, breathing her in, letting the words settle into his bones. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, wrapped in moonlight, wrapped in something that felt terrifyingly like forever. Finally she pulled back, looked up at him. "We should get back." "Probably. The pack will worry. They always worry. Fenris will make comments. He always makes comments." She smiled, took his hand, started walking, then stopped, turned. "One more thing." "What?" "You're still terrifying." Ronan blinked. "I thought You're still terrifying." She squeezed his hand. "But now I know why." "Why?" "Because you're afraid." She smiled softly. "And brave people who are afraid? That's the most terrifying thing of all." She tugged him forward. He followed, his wolf purring, his heart full, and for the first time in 10 years, Ronan Draeven wasn't afraid of being seen. They reached the pack house to find everyone waiting. Fenris stood at the front, arms crossed, eyebrow raised. "Took you long enough," he said flatly. Nyra laughed. Ronan growled. The pack erupted in cheers, and in the chaos Nyra leaned close and whispered, "Tomorrow we talk about rings." Ronan's heart stopped. "What?" "You heard me, Mountain." She walked inside. He stood frozen. His wolf howled. The stranger arrived at midday. Tall, broad-shouldered, confident smile, eyes that lingered too long on Nyra the moment she walked past. Ronan noticed immediately. His wolf noticed first. "Kaelin of the Silver Moon Pack," the stranger announced to the gathered warriors, bowing slightly. "Here to discuss trade routes between our territories." Fenris appeared at Ronan's elbow. "Do we know him?" "No." "Should we know him?" "No." "Then why is he looking at Nyra like she's the main course?" Ronan's jaw tightened. Kaelin was definitely looking at Nyra like she was the main course. Nyra, who had stopped to grab water from the well, completely unaware of the predator watching her from across the square. Unaware until Kaelin moved, walked toward her, smiled. "You must be the famous Nyra Vale," he said smoothly. "I've heard stories about you," Ronan's wolf growled. Nyra straightened from the well, water skin in hand, and assessed the stranger with the calm efficiency of a scout evaluating threat level. "Stories," she repeated flatly. "Good stories." Kaelin stepped closer, too close, definitely too close. "They say you've been running Blackthorne while the Alpha rests." The pause was deliberate, dismissive, insulting. Ronan moved, not fast, not obviously, just appeared beside Nyra like a mountain materializing from mist. Kaelin's eyes widened slightly. "Alpha Draeven." He recovered quickly, smile back in place. "I'd heard you were unwell." Ronan said nothing, just stood, close to Nyra, close enough that their shoulders almost touched, close enough that his presence radiated like heat from stone. "Oh, I'm well," he said finally. The 2 words carried weight. Kaelin's smile flickered. "Excellent, excellent." He glanced between them. "I was just introducing myself to your advisor?" Nyra's eyebrow arched. "Scout." "Scout," Kaelin repeated as if tasting the word. "Interesting. A scout who attends war councils, who signs alpha reports, who—" "She does many things," Ronan interrupted. His voice was quiet, calm, terrifying. Kaelin's wolf clearly sensed it. Ronan watched the stranger's eyes flicker gold, his shoulders tense, his body prepare for a fight that hadn't been offered. Yet. "Well," Kaelin stepped back, just slightly, just enough. "Perhaps we could discuss trade over dinner." I'd love to hear more about how Blackthorne has been managed lately. His eyes slid to Nyra again. The invitation includes both of you. Oh, of course. Nyra's lips curved. Not a smile, something sharper. I'll check my schedule, she said. Kaelin nodded, bowed again, and retreated toward the guest quarters. Ronan watched him go. Didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink. You're doing it again, Nyra murmured. What? The staring, the not blinking, the I'm calculating your death expression. He looked at you. People look at me. He looked at you specifically. Ronan. He looked at you like, he stopped, jaw working, like you were something to be acquired. Nyra turned to face him fully. The square buzzed around them, warriors training, elders chatting, children running, but they existed in their own bubble of tension. And what am I? She asked softly. What? What am I to you? Ronan's throat worked. Mine, he said. The word dropped between them like a stone. Nyra's eyes widened, just slightly, just briefly. Then she smiled. Good answer. She walked toward the war tent. Ronan followed, because following her felt more natural than breathing. Dinner was a disaster, not because of the food, because Kaelin sat across from Nyra and spent the entire meal talking to her, asking questions, laughing at her answers, leaning closer, touching her hand when she passed the bread. Ronan's vision went red. His wolf screamed. He didn't move, didn't speak, didn't do anything except sit beside Nyra, close, too close, shoulder to shoulder, and exist, terrifyingly, silently, completely. The warriors at the table noticed first. Their conversations faded. Their eyes darted between Ronan and Kaelin, and their hands moved closer to their weapons, just in case, just in case. Elder Marlowe choked on his wine. Bryce actually froze mid-bite. Fenris leaned back in his chair and watched with the expression of a man enjoying excellent theater. And then, Kaelin was saying, completely oblivious, we tracked the rogue through 3 territories before realizing he'd been hiding in our own training grounds the entire time. Nyra laughed politely. Kaelin beamed, reached for her hand again. Ronan's hand moved, not fast, not violently, just settled on the table, between them, close enough that Kaelin's fingers brushed against his instead of hers. Kaelin froze, looked down at Ronan's hand, looked up at Ronan's face. Ronan's expression hadn't changed. Still calm, still blank, still absolutely terrifying. Sorry, Ronan said quietly. Were you reaching for something? Kaelin's smile cracked. The bread, he managed. Just the bread. Ronan picked up the bread, handed it to him. Didn't look away. Kaelin took the bread. Didn't eat it. Just held it, staring at the alpha who had just claimed territory without moving from his chair. After dinner, Nyra cornered him in the hallway. That was ridiculous, she said. Ronan leaned against the wall, arms crossed, expression unreadable. What was? You, the hand thing, the bread thing. I gave him bread. You threatened him with bread. Bread is not threatening. Bread in your hand is threatening. Everything in your hand is threatening. You could hold a flower and people would run. Ronan considered this. Flowers are nice. Flowers in your hand are warnings. I don't understand humans. Wolves, Ronan, you don't understand wolves. She stepped closer. You were jealous. No, you were possessive. I was strategic. Strategically terrifying. He didn't deny it. Nyra studied his face in the torchlight. The hard jaw, the steady eyes, the mouth that softened only for her. You know I'm not interested in him, right? Yes. You know I chose you. Yes. Then why the show? Ronan was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out, pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. Because my wolf doesn't care about logic, he murmured against her skin. My wolf saw him touch you and wanted to destroy something. Nyra's breath caught. Ronan, I didn't destroy anything. I didn't roar. I didn't challenge. I just... He pulled back slightly, met her eyes. I just stood beside you, so he'd know. Know what? That you're not alone. His thumb traced her cheek. That you're mine. That touching you means touching me. Her eyes glistened. You're really bad at this, she whispered. At what? Being jealous without being adorable. His brow furrowed. Adorable? Absolutely adorable. Terrifying and adorable. It's a devastating combination. She kissed him, quick, warm, leaving him wanting more. Then she pulled back and smiled. Come on, Mountain. Let's go check on our guest, make sure he's recovered from the bread incident. She walked down the hall. Ronan followed, his wolf preening. They found Kaelin in the guest quarters, packing. Not subtly. Packing. Bags open, clothes inside, the clear intention of leaving, and he looked up when they entered, flushed, flustered, terrified. Alpha, he managed. I was just... the trade routes. I think perhaps another time would be... Leaving so soon? Ronan asked mildly. Kaelin's throat worked. Yes. Urgent pack matters. Silver Moon requires my immediate... He's scared of you, Nyra murmured. Ronan ignored her, walked closer to Kaelin. Not threateningly, just present. You came to assess our weakness, Ronan said quietly. To see if Blackthorne was vulnerable during my rest. Kaelin went pale. I would never. You looked at my woman, touched her hand, imagined possibilities. Ronan stopped an arm's length away. I'm not angry. Kaelin blinked. You're not? No. Then why are you standing so close? Ronan considered the question. Because I want you to remember, he said softly, that weakness is a choice, that resting is temporary, that Blackthorne stands because I allow it to stand. He stepped back, gestured toward the door. Safe travels, Kaelin of Silver Moon. Send my regards to your Alpha. Kaelin didn't run, but it was close. That night on the cliffs, Nyra laughed until she cried. You should have seen his face, she gasped. When you handed him the bread, I thought he was going to expire. Ronan stood beside her, watching the moon. It was bread. It was a declaration of war wrapped in carbohydrates. I don't understand. You really don't, do you? She wiped her eyes. Ronan, you're the most feared Alpha in 3 territories. You don't move for anyone. You don't touch anyone. And suddenly you're standing beside me at dinner, and putting your hand where his was going to go, looking at him like he'd just asked to borrow your favorite sword and lose it. Ronan considered this. That's accurate. And then you followed me into his quarters and stood close enough to smell his fear. I wanted him to remember. Remember what? That you're protected. He turned to face her fully. That you'll always be protected. That anyone who looks at you wrong answers to me. Nyra's smile softened. Oh, Mountain. What? You're adorable. I'm terrifying. Both. She stepped into his space, wrapped her arms around his waist, looked up at him with stars in her eyes. You're terrifying and adorable and mine. His heart stopped. Yours? Mine. She squeezed tighter. Get used to it. He kissed her, slow and deep and permanent. When they broke apart, and she was smiling. So, she said, about those rings. Ronan's breath caught. What about them? I wasn't joking. I want you, officially, permanently, in front of the pack and the moon and everyone who needs to know exactly who I belong to. His wolf howled. Nyra. And before you panic, she pressed a finger to his lips. I'm not asking tomorrow. I'm not asking next week. I'm just telling you. So you know. So you stop being jealous of idiots who touch my hand." He kissed her finger, then her palm, then her wrist. "I wasn't jealous," he murmured against her skin. "You were insanely jealous." "I was strategically concerned. You were terrifying bread hands." "Same thing," she laughed, pulled him closer, and under the moonlight, on the cliffs, where everything had changed. They stopped talking. The next morning, Kaelin's departure was witnessed by the entire pack. He rode out at dawn, alone, without looking back. Fenris found Ronan in the war tent reviewing reports. "He's gone. I know. You didn't kill him. No. You didn't threaten him. No." Fenris was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You're changing." Ronan looked up from the reports. "Yes. Is that a good thing?" Ronan's eyes drifted to the tent entrance, where Nyra was walking toward them, laughing at something Bryce had said, sunlight catching her hair. "Yes," he said softly. "It's the best thing." Fenris followed his gaze, smiled. "Good answer, Alpha." The training grounds fell silent, not because Ronan was there, because Nyra had just thrown a knife at his head. The blade embedded in the wooden post behind him, exactly where his skull had been 2 seconds ago. Ronan hadn't moved, hadn't flinched, hadn't even blinked. He just stood there, holding the cup of tea she'd handed him moments before, looking mildly confused. "Nice reflexes," Nyra called from across the grounds. Ronan glanced back at the knife, then at her. "You missed. I was aiming for the post. Behind my head. Behind your head is still the post." His eyes narrowed slightly. Just slightly. Just enough. Was that a test? Nyra walked toward him, casual as sunlight. And a test of what? Reflexes. Everyone has reflexes. Weak wolves don't track projectiles without looking. She stopped in front of him. Close. Too close. Close enough that her scent wrapped around him like smoke. "You didn't track it," she said softly. "You didn't even move." "I'm resting." Resting wolves die when knives fly at their heads. Ronan sipped his tea. "Lucky it was a post." "Lucky," she repeated. Her eyes searched his face. His expression gave nothing. But his wolf was pacing. The tests continued. Systematically, relentlessly, brilliantly. At the morning meal, she accidentally knocked a cup off the table. Ronan caught it before it hit the ground, one-handed without looking, while still chewing bread. "Nice catch," she observed. "Nice aim." "I didn't aim." "Your elbow twitched." She blinked. "My elbow?" "Before you reached. You always twitch your elbow before you move. It's a tell." Nyra stared at him. "I have a tell?" "Everyone has tells. Yours is your elbow. Bryce's is his left eyebrow. Fenris holds his breath." She had never noticed any of this. In 2 months of observing the pack, she had never catalogued individual tells. Ronan had done it while resting. "Interesting," she murmured. Ronan's jaw tightened. He knew that tone. That was her suspicious tone. By midday, she'd escalated. They walked through the marketplace together. Nyra shopping, Ronan carrying, the pack pretending not to watch. When she stopped abruptly, tripped, fell. Ronan caught her before she hit the ground, one arm around her waist, her body pressed against his, on her face inches from his. "Clumsy," he observed. "Testing," she corrected. His eyes flickered. "Testing what?" "Strength." She didn't pull away, didn't move, just stayed there, in his arms, heart pounding against his chest. "You caught me like I weighed nothing. You weigh nothing. I weigh 150. That's nothing. For a normal wolf." Ronan went still. "For a resting wolf," she continued softly. "Your grip is impressive. Your reflexes are sharp. Your everything is. She stopped, swallowed. You're not weak, Ronan. I never said I was. You let people think you were. People think many things. I'm not people. His eyes dropped to her mouth, lifted back to her eyes. I know. The marketplace buzzed around them. Neither moved. You can let me go now, she whispered. Tom, don't want to. Ronan. Nyra. She laughed, soft, breathless, and pushed against his chest. He released her. Immediately. Obediently. Too obediently. She filed that away too. That afternoon she found him in the war tent, alone, reviewing reports. His reports. The ones she'd signed. He looked up when she entered. Said nothing. Just watched. She walked to the table, sat across from him, placed both hands flat on the wood. I have questions. Ask. You've been resting for weeks. Yes. During which time I've been running the pack. Yes. And yet, she slid a stack of papers toward him. These reports are annotated, in your handwriting, with corrections to my corrections. Ronan glanced at the papers, said nothing. The Eastern Patrol rotation, she continued. I fixed it, optimized it. I made it perfect. And you, she flipped pages. You added a note about the third watch, suggested a different route, accounted for moonlight phases I didn't consider. You missed the full moon window. Wolves are faster during full moons. Patrols need to adjust. I know that. Then why didn't you adjust it? Because she stopped, stared at him. Because I didn't think about it, which is exactly my point. Ronan waited. You're not supposed to be thinking about patrol rotations. You're resting. You're supposed to be weak. You're supposed to be, she gestured vaguely, incompetent. I'm not incompetent. I know you're not incompetent. That's the problem. Ronan leaned back in his chair, studied her face, the frustration, the confusion, the suspicion burning in her eyes. What do you want me to say, Nyra? The truth. The truth about what? About you. She stood, walked around the table, stopped beside his chair, looked down at him with something fierce and wounded in her expression. You catch knives without flinching. You catch me without effort. You correct my reports like you've been doing this for years. I have been doing this for years. Exactly. She threw her hands up. That's exactly it. You've been doing this for years, so why? She stopped, swallowed. Why did you pretend? Silence. The tent fabric rustled in the wind. Somewhere outside, warriors laughed. Inside, everything held its breath. I told you, Ronan said quietly. I wanted you to see me without fear. And I do. You see this, he gestured at himself. The alpha, the mountain, the terror. I see you. Do you? He stood, towered over her, unclose enough to touch, close enough to devour. Do you see the man who carried your groceries? The man who followed you through markets? The man who, his voice cracked, who loves you so much it hurts? Nyra's breath caught. Ronan, that's who I was trying to show you, not the alpha, not the strength, just me. Her eyes glistened. Then why does it feel like you're still hiding? He flinched, just slightly, just briefly, but she saw it. Ronan. Her voice softened. What aren't you telling me? He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, and from outside a horn sounded. Danger, borders, now. They moved together, no words needed. Nyra grabbed her blades. Ronan grabbed his, then stopped, realizing what he'd done. Too fast, too natural, too alpha. Nyra noticed. Of course she noticed. She noticed everything. But there was no time to address it. The boarders were screaming. They arrived to find chaos, not an attack, something worse. A rock slide had blocked the eastern pass, the main route for traders, travelers, supplies. Dozens of wolves were already working to clear it, but the boulders were massive. Impossible for normal wolves. Ronan assessed the situation in seconds, calculated the weight, the angles, the effort required. Then he walked toward the largest boulder. "Ronan," Nyra's voice, sharp, suspicious. "What are you doing?" He didn't answer, couldn't answer, because if he moved this boulder, if he showed his true strength, the pretense would shatter. But if he didn't move it, people would die. Supplies would be lost. The pack would suffer. He looked back at Nyra, at her eyes. Watching him, waiting, he made a choice. The boulder shifted, then lifted, then flew. Ronan threw it like it weighed nothing. The pack stared. Nyra stared. The boulder landed 30 feet away with a crash that shook the ground. Silence. Absolute deafening silence. Ronan turned back to the pass, moved to the next boulder, lifted it, threw it, the third, the fourth. By the time he stopped, the pass was clear. The pack was frozen. And Nyra was gone. He found her on the cliffs. Where else? She stood with her back to him, facing the moon, arms wrapped around herself. He approached slowly, carefully, like she was a wounded animal. "Nyra, you lied to me." The words hit like blades. "I didn't. You pretended to be weak. You let me think," her voice cracked. "You let me think you needed me. I do need you. You threw boulders like they were pebbles. You've been playing at weakness while I," she laughed, broken and bitter, "while I ran your pack, while I worried about you, while I fell in love with you." Nyra. Was any of it real? She turned, finally faced him. Tears tracked down her cheeks. The grocery carrying, the cliff conversations, the bread, was that all just strategy? Ronan's heart shattered. No. Then what? He moved, crossed the distance between them, took her face in his hands, forced her to meet his eyes. The grocery carrying was real, he said fiercely. The cliff conversations were real. The bread was absolutely real. Every moment I spent with you, every laugh, every touch, every kiss, was the most real thing I've ever felt. Then why? Because I was terrified. She blinked. What? I was terrified. His voice broke. Terrified that if you saw the alpha, the real alpha, the one who spent 10 years building fear, you'd run. That you'd look at me like everyone else looks at me. That you'd flinch. Nyra's tears slowed. Ronan. I've never been loved without power, he whispered. I've never been chosen for me. And when you walked into my territory and didn't flinch, when you touched me and stayed, I panicked. I thought if I showed you everything, you'd leave. She stared at him. Long moment. Forever. You idiot, she breathed. I know. You absolute grocery-carrying, boulder-throwing idiot. I know. She pulled back, just enough to see his face. Do you love me? More than anything. Do you trust me? Yes. Then show me. She grabbed his hands, pressed them to her chest, over her heart. Show me everything. No more pretending, no more hiding, no more resting. Ronan's throat worked. Nyra. I'm not going anywhere, Mountain. She smiled through tears. I chose you when you were weak. I chose you when you were ridiculous. I'm still choosing you now. He kissed her, desperate, real, everything. When they broke apart, she was laughing. You threw a boulder. I know, a boulder. It was in the way. You threw it like it was a grape. Grapes are smaller. Ronan. What? She shook her head, laughed again, pressed her forehead to his. I can't believe I love you. I can't believe you do. Believe it. I'm trying. Try harder. She pulled back, looked at him with something fierce and warm. Now, about the pretending. Yes? We're going to talk about it, really talk about it, tomorrow, after I've processed the Boulder thing. Okay. And you're going to tell me everything. Yes. And then, she smiled, we're going to tell the pack. Ronan's heart stuttered. The pack? They deserve the truth. We deserve the truth. No more secrets. He looked at her, at the woman who'd seen him at his worst, at his weakest, at his most ridiculous, and stayed. Okay, he whispered. Okay? Okay. He kissed her forehead. Tomorrow. The truth. She nodded, turned back to the moon, leaned into his chest. He wrapped his arms around her, and for the first time in weeks, Ronan stopped pretending. The next morning, Nyra walked into the war tent alone. Ronan was already there, standing at the head of the table, in front of the entire pack. He looked at her. She nodded. He turned to face them. I have something to tell you. Fenris raised an eyebrow. Bryce gripped the table. Elder Marlowe reached for his tea, and Nyra moved to stand beside Ronan. Where she belonged, the war tent emptied. One by one the pack filed out. Confused glances, whispered questions, Fenris's knowing eyes lingering on Ronan before he disappeared through the flap. Then it was just them. Ronan at the head of the table, Nyra in the center of the room, silence stretching like a blade. You were going to tell them, she said quietly. Yes. Everything? Everything. She walked closer, stopped at the edge of the table. Her fingers traced the wood grain, slow, deliberate, thinking. Before you do, she said, I need to ask you something. Ronan's throat tightened. Anything. She looked up, met his eyes, held them. Were you pretending? The words landed like stones. Ronan didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. All of it, she continued. The weakness, the resting, the grocery carrying, and she swallowed, the moments on the cliffs, the kisses, the I love yous. Her voice cracked on the last word. Were any of them real? Ronan's heart shattered. Nyra, just answer me. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away, didn't flinch, didn't break. Were you pretending? He should answer, should say no immediately, should grab her and prove it. But the words wouldn't come, because the truth was complicated. The truth was terrifying. The truth was... I don't know how to answer that. Nyra's face shifted, hurt, confusion, fear. What do you mean you don't know? Ronan moved, circled the table, stopped inches from her, close enough to touch, close enough to feel her warmth, close enough that her scent wrapped around him like home. I pretended to be weak, he said slowly. That part was strategy. That part was lies. She flinched. He caught her face in his hands, gentle, desperate, real. But everything else, his voice broke. Nyra, everything else was the most real thing I've ever felt. Then why? Because I'm terrified, she blinked. Of what? Of losing this. His thumb traced her cheek. Of losing you, the version of you that touched me without fear, that laughed at my bread statements, that looked at me like I was normal. Her eyes softened. Ronan, I've been alpha for 10 years, he continued, words tumbling now, desperate and raw. 10 years of wolves flinching when I walk past, 10 years of silence when I enter rooms, 10 years of alone. He pulled her closer, forehead to forehead, breath mingling. And then you walked in, sat in my chair, stayed, and he choked. I would rather have pretended forever than lose the way you look at me. Nyra's breath caught. Ronan, I know it's selfish. I know I should have told you. I know. He stopped, swallowed. I know I hurt you. Yes. The word was quiet, simple, devastating. You hurt me, she repeated, not because you're strong, not because you pretended, but because you didn't trust me enough to show me. He closed his eyes, felt the truth of her words like wounds. I'm sorry. Look at me. He opened his eyes. She was still there, still here, still looking at him with something that wasn't fear. Was any of it real? She asked again. The cliff nights, the kisses, the I love yous, real or strategy? Ronan's hands tightened on her face. Real, he breathed. So real, and the only real thing I've ever had. Then why couldn't you just... Because I was afraid. The confession ripped from him. Because every time I thought about telling you, I imagined you walking away. Imagined you looking at me like everyone else looks at me. Imagined losing the only person who's ever made me feel... He stopped, struggled. Human. Nyra stared at him. Long moment. Forever. Then she laughed, not mocking, not cruel, just soft. Oh, mountain. She reached up, covered his hands with hers. You're still pretending. He blinked. What? Right now. This moment. You're still trying to control the outcome. She squeezed his fingers. You're still strategizing instead of just being. I'm not... You hesitated when I asked. You calculated your answer. And you're still trying to manage how I'll react instead of trusting me to react however I need to. Ronan went still, because she was right. Of course she was right. I don't know how to stop, he admitted. I know. I've been alone so long. I know. The fear. I know. She pulled one hand from his grip, pressed it to his chest, over his heart. I can feel it, pounding. You're terrified right now. Not of me, of this, of being seen. He couldn't deny it, didn't try. Yes, she smiled, soft and sad and infinite. Good. Good? Good. She stepped closer, wrapped her arms around his waist, looked up at him with stars in her eyes. Because terrified and honest is better than strategic and hiding. Ronan's throat worked. Nyra. I'm not leaving. His heart stopped. What? I'm not leaving. She squeezed tighter. I'm angry. I'm hurt. I need time to process the fact that you've been throwing boulders while I worried about your health. A laugh escaped him, broken, surprised, real. But I'm not leaving. Why? Because I love you. She said it simply, like fact, like truth. I love the grocery carrier. I love the boulder thrower. I love the man who stands on cliffs and confesses his fears like they're sins. Her eyes glistened. And I love that you're terrified right now. Because it means this matters. I matter. Ronan broke, pulled her close, buried his face in her hair, shook with the weight of feeling. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. You should have trusted me. Yes. You should have shown me. Yes. You should have let me choose. Yes. He pulled back, met her eyes. Everything. How I should have done everything differently. Nyra studied his face. The fear, the love, the hope. Then do it now. What? Show me. Trust me. Let me choose. She stepped back, just slightly, just enough to see all of him. No more strategy. No more pretending, just you. Ronan stood in the center of the war tent, the place where he'd ruled for a decade, the place where she'd first sat in his chair, the place where everything had changed. Nyra Vale, he said slowly. Yes? I love you. I know. I love you more than my territory, more than my pack, more than my power. Her breath caught. Ronan, I would give up everything. He took her hands. Everything. To keep you. To keep this. To keep the way you look at me like I'm not a monster. Her eyes filled. Anam, you're not a monster. I've done monstrous things. We all have. I've terrified people. You've protected people. You've carried groceries. She laughed through tears. You've caught falling children. You've stood on cliffs and trembled because you were afraid of losing me. She squeezed his hands. That's not a monster, Mountain. That's a man. Ronan's wolf howled. He kissed her. Not desperate this time. Not frantic. Reverent. Like she was the most precious thing in the world. Because she was. When they broke apart, she was smiling. Okay, she said. Okay? I forgive you. Just like that? No. She shook her head. Not just like that. I need time. I need talks. I need you to prove every day that you trust me enough to be real. I will. But, she touched his face. I choose you. Still. Always. The pretending doesn't change that. Ronan closed his eyes, felt the word settle into his bones. She chooses me. Still. Always. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For staying. She smiled, pulled him down for another kiss. Soft, warm, home. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, wrapped in truth, wrapped in something that felt terrifyingly like forever. Finally, she pulled back. So, she said. So, the pack is waiting. I know. They're confused. I know. They need answers. I know. She raised an eyebrow. Are you going to give them? Ronan looked toward the tent flap, toward the warriors gathered outside, toward the pack that had chosen her, then back at Nyra. We, he said. What? We are going to give them. He took her hand, laced their fingers together. Together. No more hiding, no more strategy, just us. Nyra's smile could have lit the world. Good answer, Mountain. She tugged him toward the flap. He followed, like he always would, like he wanted to. They stepped outside together. The pack waited in the clearing, hundreds of wolves, watching, waiting, hoping. Fenris stood at the front, arms crossed, eyebrow raised. Well, he called. Are you going to explain, or do we have to guess? Ronan looked at Nyra. She nodded. He turned to face them. I have something to tell you, he said. Something I should have told you weeks ago. The pack leaned forward. Bryce gripped Fenris's arm. Elder Marlowe forgot his tea. Ronan took a breath and began. I was never weak. The words landed like thunder, gasps, whispers, shock. Oh, I pretended, he continued, to test. He glanced at Nyra, to test if someone could love me without fear. Silence, absolute silence. Then Fenris laughed, loud and long and delighted. You pretended to be weak, for weeks. And she, he pointed at Nyra. She took over your entire pack? Ronan's jaw tightened. Yes. Fenris howled. The pack erupted. Not anger, not betrayal, laughter. Ronan stared. Nyra smiled. They're not mad, she murmured. Why not? Because they already chose me, and now they know you're human enough to be ridiculous. He looked at her, at the laughing pack, at everything he'd almost lost by pretending, and for the first time, he laughed too. The laughter faded. The pack dispersed, slowly, reluctantly, stealing glances over their shoulders, until only Fenris remained, arms crossed, expression caught between amusement and something softer. You good? He asked Ronan. Ronan looked at Nyra. She nodded. We're good, Ronan said. Fenris studied them for a long moment. Then he smiled, rare, genuine, warm, and clapped Ronan on the shoulder. Took you long enough, Alpha. He walked away, leaving them alone. The cliffs called to them. Without words, without discussion, they walked. Through the training grounds, past the pack house, up the winding path to the place where everything had changed. Moonlight painted the world silver. The territory stretched below them, lights flickering like earthbound stars. Ronan stopped at the edge, stared out at everything he'd almost lost. "You're thinking too loud," Nyra said quietly. She settled onto the grass beside him, not touching, just there. "I was pretending," he said. "I know. I was pretending for weeks, lying to everyone, lying to you. I know. I watched you take over my pack, watched them choose you, watched you." His voice cracked. "Watched you shine." Nyra waited, didn't push, didn't fill the silence. "I was jealous," he admitted, "of myself, of the version of me that got to watch you without hiding, of every moment you laughed with them instead of me." She reached out, took his hand, still didn't speak. "But that's not why I pretended." He turned to face her fully. Moonlight caught the vulnerability in his eyes. "I pretended because I wanted to know, needed to know, if anyone could love me without terror." Nyra's breath caught. "Ronan, I've been alpha for 10 years, he continued. 10 years of fear, 10 years of silence when I enter rooms, 10 years of wolves who obey but never choose." He squeezed her hand. "And then you walked in, sat in my chair, looked at me like I was just some annoying man who carried your groceries." A laugh escaped her, soft, surprised. "You are annoying, I know. And you did carry my groceries, 8 bags." Your fingers turned purple. "Purple is royal," she laughed again, then sobered. "And now?" she asked quietly. "Do you know?" "Know what?" "If someone can love you without terror." Ronan looked at her, at the woman who'd seen him at his weakest, at his most ridiculous, at his most real. "Yes," he whispered. "I know." Nyra stood, pulled him up with her, faced him on the cliff's edge. "Then let me say something." He waited. "I didn't fall in love with you because you were weak." Her voice was steady, certain, true. "I didn't fall in love with you because you were strong." His heart pounded. "I fell in love with you because you carried my groceries without complaining, because you stood in corners and glared at warriors who looked at me wrong, because you said bread belonged on the floor and meant it." He laughed, broken, surprised, real. "Because you followed me through markets like a lost wolf, because you caught falling children, because you stood on these cliffs and trembled at the thought of losing me." She stepped closer, close enough to touch, close enough to feel. The strength was never the reason, Mountain. The power was never the point. She touched his face. "You, just you. That's who I chose." Ronan's wolf sang. "Nyra, I love you." She said it simply, like breathing, like truth. "I loved you when you were weak. I love you now that you're strong. I'll love you tomorrow and the next day and the next." Her eyes glistened. "So stop pretending. Stop strategizing. Stop being afraid that I'll run." She grabbed his shirt, pulled him down to her level. "I'm here, Ronan. I'm staying, and I'm going to keep staying until you believe it." He kissed her, not gentle, not reverent, desperate, like she was air and he'd been drowning. She kissed him back just as fiercely, hands fisted in his shirt, body pressed against his, holding on. When they broke apart, they were both breathless. "That was," Nyra started, "intense?" "Wet," Ronan blinked. "Wet. You have no idea how to kiss softly, do you?" "I can kiss softly." "Prove it." He leaned in, brushed his lips against hers, featherlight, gentle. She melted. Then he pulled back, smirked. "That's soft enough?" Nyra stared at him. "You smirked." "I did. You never smirk." "I'm expanding my emotional range." "Your emotional range is—" She stopped, laughed, shook her head. "You're ridiculous." "I know. And I love you anyway." "I know that too." She punched his arm. Not hard. Just enough. That's for being smug. He caught her fist, kissed her knuckles. That's for staying. Her eyes went liquid. Ronan. Nyra. She stopped, swallowed. I think something's happening. He went still. What kind of something? Wolf something. She pressed a hand to her chest. It feels like. Her eyes widened. Ronan. He felt it too. A warmth spreading from his chest, connecting. The mate bond, he breathed. It can't be. We didn't. It doesn't need a ceremony, he pulled her close. It just needs this. Truth, trust, choice. Nyra looked up at him, eyes wide, heart pounding against his. Is this real? Feel it. He pressed his hand to her chest, over her heart. Feel me. Is it real? She closed her eyes, breathed, felt, opened them. Yes. The word carried everything. The bond settled between them. Not explosive, not dramatic, just warm, certain, inevitable, like it had always been there, waiting for them to stop pretending and start being. Nyra laughed, soft, wondering. It feels like home, he finished. Yes, she pressed closer. Exactly like home. They stood on the cliffs, moonlight wrapping them, the territory below, the pack somewhere in the distance, pretending not to watch. Ronan looked down at her. This is real, he said. You're real. We're real. I know. No more pretending. No more strategizing. He considered this. Some strategizing is efficient. Ronan. What? I can strategize and love you. They're not mutually exclusive. She laughed, shook her head, pulled him down for another kiss. Soft this time. Real. When they broke apart, she was smiling. Hey, Mountain. Yes. I have a question. Ask. She tilted her head. Was the resting thing really the best strategy you could come up with? Because honestly, it was kind of dumb. Ronan's eye twitched. It was strategic. It was dumb. It worked. You lost your pack to me. I gained you. He pulled her closer. Worth it. Her smile softened. You're impossible. I know. And I love you. I know that too. She kissed him again, quick, warm, deliberate. Then she stepped back, grabbed his hand. Come on. Where? The pack is watching. They're going to have opinions. And I want to see Fenris's face when we tell him about the mate bond. Ronan's lips curved. Rare, genuine, happy. His face will be excellent. They walked down the path together, hand in hand, mate bond humming between them. The pack waited in the clearing, exactly as Nyra predicted. Fenris stood at the front, arms crossed, expression caught between curiosity, and I told you so. Well, he called as they approached. Are you going to explain why you've been on the cliffs for 2 hours, or do we have to guess? Ronan and Nyra exchanged glances. Mate bond, they said together. Silence. Then, Fenris's jaw dropped, actually dropped. Bryce squeaked. Elder Marlowe choked on nothing. The pack erupted. Cheers, howls, pandemonium. Fenris recovered first. You, he pointed at Ronan, pretended to be weak for weeks. He pointed at Nyra, took over his entire pack. He pointed at both of them. And now you're mates. Yes, Ronan said simply. Fenris stared. Then he laughed, loud and long and delighted. Only you, Ronan, only you could lose your pack to win your mate. I didn't lose them. You absolutely lost them. Fenris gestured at the cheering wolves. They love her more than you. Unadmitted. Ronan looked at the pack, at the way they surrounded Nyra, at the way they celebrated her, then at Nyra herself, laughing, radiant his. They do, he admitted quietly. And I don't mind. Fenris's expression softened. Good answer, Alpha. The celebration lasted until dawn. Food, music, stories. Bryce told the bread on the floor story at least 6 times. Elder Marlowe danced with someone's grandmother. Fenris got drunk and tried to arm wrestle Ronan. He lost, spectacularly. And through it all, Nyra stayed close, touching, laughing. Home. As the first light crept over the horizon, she pulled him aside, away from the noise, away from the pack, to the edge of the clearing where they could see the cliffs. "Hey," she said softly. Hey. I meant what I said up there. I know. I'm not going anywhere." "I know that too." She smiled, turned to face him fully. "Then kiss me again, soft this time, really soft." He leaned in, brushed his lips against hers, gentle, reverent. She melted. Then he pulled back, smirked. "That soft enough?" She stared at him. "You did it again." "Did what?" Smirked. "Twice in one night. Your emotional range is expanding dangerously. I'm a complex wolf. You're a menace." "Same thing." She laughed, pulled him down, kissed him properly. When they broke apart, she was breathless and smiling. "I love you, Mountain." "I love you too, Scout." "Good, good." They turned together, looked toward the cliffs where everything had changed, toward the territory below, toward the pack that had chosen them both. Ronan's arm wrapped around her waist, hers around his. The mate bond hummed between them, warm, certain, forever. The end. The Alpha King stopped pretending to be weak and learned that love was stronger than fear. Did you love this story? Smash that like button. Comment your favorite moment. Bread on the floor, the grocery bags, the cliff confessions. Subscribe for more wolf shifter romances with fierce heroines, possessive alphas, and happily ever after guaranteed.